Jurassic Park 3 gave us one of its most mysterious deaths in the franchise history, the off-screen demise of Ben Hildebrand. But what if everything we thought we knew about how he died was completely wrong? You see, I did a video on just that a few years ago, and we're revisiting it, we're challenging it, because I believe I may have missed the true cause of his death all along. You see, as seen in Jurassic Park 3, Ben and the young Eric Kirby crash land on Isla Sorna while parasailing. Eric survives, somehow, for weeks. That's a completely different story. But Ben is found dead later on, dangling from that same parachute in a tree. You see, officially, the films never show what kills Ben. All we get is his skeletal remains when the group find him later on. You see, the confusing thing here is they later find footage from the camcorder, which they were using during their flight, and it shows them how Eric himself escapes the parachute, but Ben is left dangling. The confusing thing here is, on this camera footage, they're literally a few feet from the ground. Later on in the movie, however, Ben is found further up in the trees, and not only that, he's missing his bottom half torso. But here's the interesting thing, the video we see argues that Ben didn't die from any type of on-screen injury. Ben is communicating quite effectively, so head trauma is immediately out of the question. He's not impaled by any type of branch, because if he was, Eric would 100% be in a state of shock and potentially screaming. And another confusing factor here is, Eric was able to get out of the harness. Surely Ben should have been able to as well. Obviously the footage ends abruptly, and the next time we see Ben is when he's half the man he used to be. And not only that, has moved several feet higher in the tree. So what's actually happened to him? Well, let's take a look at the shooting script for Jurassic Park 3 and see if there's any answers there. As you can see here, you can see Ben is talking to Eric by saying, "Are you okay, buddy?" But there's a gurgling in his voice. Ben may be more cute than he's letting on. Later on, it shows Ben again with a weaker tone of voice, "We're going to get you out of this, pal." And on that, the power and picture fade away. That's clearly showing us that Ben is suffering from some type of injury and he's on his way out. There are several problems with this, however. Jurassic Park 3 was being written, then rewritten as it was being filmed, so we can't 100% trust this script. Not only that, it doesn't match up 100% with what we see in the camcorder footage. There is something else I'd like to point out here. There is a comic adaptation of Jurassic Park 3 and it follows Eric Kirby and his survival on Isla Sorna for them 8 weeks. Believe it or not, it's actually a novel, not a comic, and it's called Jurassic Park Adventures, and I'm going to read this part from it now, because you see, Eric himself actually goes into detail on the fall, and this might actually solve the mystery. "I remember hanging there, and Ben telling me everything was going to be alright, then looking at him and knowing that wasn't true. He'd been injured in the fall, badly injured. He told me he was going to be alright again, he smiled, and then went quiet. And even though his eyes didn't close, I knew he wasn't with me anymore." That seems to imply that Ben himself died there and then, with Eric literally watching what happened. And it kind of backs up the video camera footage, right? Well, not entirely. If that was the case, how did he end up several feet further in the tree and then missing his legs? Something isn't quite right here. You see, that extract and the script is kind of trying to allude to the fact that he died from internal injuries, which doesn't match what we see on screen at all. You see, some people believe the theory that pteranodons were the cause of Ben's death, that they had come down, seen Ben in the trees, attacked him, potentially grabbed him, and ripped him and pushed him further up into the trees, and in the process, tore off his bottom half. There's no real evidence to support this apart from the fact that we know pteranodons were on the island. That's it. So that's completely out the window. There's also the option of that compies attacked his bodily remains. You see, Ben could have hit trees and hit parts of the canopy on his way down, causing internal injuries. That would match up with the shooting script, you know, the laboured breathing, etc. But it doesn't match up with what we see in the footage. That could be that Ben was keeping it under wraps at that point in time, but later succumbed to his wounds. Compies could then easily scale that tree and scavenge his remains. That would explain why the majority of his skeletal remains are intact apart from the lower part of his torso. I do believe compies to play a part in scavenging the remains, but it doesn't answer where his legs went or how he went further up in the tree. Now, if a large carnivore came along, it could easily rip off Ben's lower half, the legs, no problem at all. But wouldn't that leave the body also in a mangled shape, bite marks on the torso? And as we see, the skeletal remains look pretty intact. It doesn't show any type of big chomper coming along and ripping it to shreds. So what about little chompers? We know the raptors themselves are on that island, and we know they have a habit of jumping up at people and trying to snap off their limbs. They do so to Eric Kirby's mother. To be fair, she probably deserved that after the stunt she pulled with the microphone, but nonetheless, is showing us that raptors have the ability to jump up and try and snag and grab anything they see in the trees. And there we have it, they removed his legs. Well, hang on, there's something clearly wrong with this theory. On the camcorder, Ben is literally a few feet from the ground. The raptors wouldn't even have to jump that high and will be able to ravage his entire body, not just the legs. And the evidence we see of the skeletal remains show that no other carnivore, well, large carnivore or medium-sized like the raptors, got a hold of his upper torso. And just like in my original video, this tells me that Ben's legs were removed/eaten whilst he was still alive. You see, if he had succumbed to his injuries that close to the floor, some other dinosaur would have picked clean his entire corpse and his skeletal remains would have been scattered everywhere. This isn't the case. He clearly pulled himself further up into the trees potentially. No other dinosaur had pulled him further up into the canopy or further up into the trees. Sure, you could say pteranodons had done it. They grabbed him and tried to fly away with his corpse only to realize it's entangled, and in doing so they pulled him further up into the trees. There's no evidence for this. The evidence suggests that Ben himself was entangled in the tree, potentially stuck there. Otherwise, he would have let himself go and drop to the floor exactly like Eric did. He couldn't. He was stuck there. You see, in my old video, there's a comment here, and it's a pretty good one, and it says that suspension trauma is also likely a factor that could have killed him. And if you look at his harness, the flow of blood was cut from his legs via the femoral artery. Butchered that name, but never mind, you get the point. And this is actually a thing that OSHA safety personnel warn workers about when they're working in a harness. This could mean that he was struggling with internal trauma, but also had the reduced blood flow from his legs going back to the torso. His blood then gets bad, clots. So if the internal injuries didn't kill him, the clots going straight to his heart would have. This then makes sense as why he couldn't use his legs to get out of the harness. As great as the theory is, there's still something wrong. How does he end up further in the tree and only missing his legs? If he had stayed there, like I said earlier, his skeletal remains would have been completely ripped apart. Arms, chest, head would have likely been removed. But we're so close to the real answer now, I can feel it. I believe the blood clot in the legs definitely played a part. That's why he couldn't feel his legs and remove himself from the harness. You see, he was 100% stuck because when they pull him down using the parachute, he doesn't even release from the parachute then. He was clearly stuck. The group didn't even dislodge him when they pulled on it, but he was still further up in the trees, and I believe I've got a definitive answer as to what happened to Ben Hildebrand. Ben and Eric's boat crashes into the rocks. Ben unclips them from the boat. This obviously causes the parasol to drift towards Isla Sorna, with them obviously attached to it. Ben and Eric get trapped in a tree, but Ben is able to release Eric as seen by the footage. The shooting script tells us that Ben was at least injured in some type of capacity, internal, potentially, and with the blood clot in his legs due to the ropes etc. and the harness being tightly wound. This would explain all the wires and the mess when he's seen dangling there. After the camera gets switched off, Eric and Ben are still there, but they're in close proximity to the raptor nest. Raptors turn up, and the only way Eric could potentially escape is if Ben lures the raptors to him, screaming, shouting potentially, and in doing so, he will try and escape them himself, pulling himself further up into the trees. But the raptors are attacking him at this stage, jumping up at him and pulling on his legs, potentially even ripping them off in the process, or at least causing significant damage to him. With Ben now further up in the trees and the raptors now unable to reach him, there's two options here. He either A, dies of internal injuries, which is what the shooting script suggests anyway, or B, succumb to blood loss from literally missing his lower half of his body, the legs. This confidently explains how he's found further up in the trees and is missing his legs. It also ties the raptors into the story more neatly than before, and also gives Ben's death a bit more meaning. He sacrificed himself to save Eric. Whether or not that's true is debatable. But hang on, how do you explain his skeletal remains? Well, that's easy. The small predators / compies. They could easily swarm around the corpse, climb the tree, pick it clean. And not only that, the dehydration and his exposure in that humidity and environment would decompose him. The jungle ecology in itself would definitely play that factor. Could there have been another option, however? Something we haven't seen on Isla Sorna? Some other type of animal? Jurassic Park is known for having other animals seen off-screen potentially. Just look at Jurassic World. There were several dinosaurs which we knew were in Jurassic World which were not seen. Deinosuchus, the plesiosaur, Monolophosaurus, Carnotaurus. Wouldn't it be great to think about something else which was there? A giant arachnid maybe? But that's going off pace. Let's get back to script. Throw it all together in the mix and that explains everything here. You see, it's easy to shrug off Ben's death as a minor detail, but how he died actually matters, because it speaks as to how vulnerable the humans are in the world of dinosaurs, and the franchise chose to leave this ambiguous. But in terms of did we get anything wrong from my initial video, we are pretty much on the money, although we refined the theory today. We've given it more meaning and brought the raptors into it in a more organic way, and that's thanks to the comments on my previous video. But there is still a mystery unsolved, and that's Eric Kirby. Kirby survives 8 weeks alone on that island. How is that even possible? Well, if you want to know, I have the video right here, so continue that Jurassic Park binge. Massive thanks to the InGen team who are on screen now. You guys keep the power on in the park. Thank you very much. DVM Wannabe 1018, Fallen Zerona, and our Jurassic CEOs, Joseph Frost's Ghost and Zarkadian. And if you came across a raptor out in the open, could your day get any worse? You bet Jurassic can. Catch you later.